Welcome in another episode of Bourbon South. Chase Parham, Steve Thomason here at the Whiskey House in Oxford, and today joined by Michael Thompson, former Ole Miss executive, Texas A&M executive, now the head of the SEC network. Michael, good to talk to you. Good to see you. Right off the bat, before we get started, look, we're going to move on, or anything else, but you're in SEC country up in North Carolina, and whatnot. You get to go over and visit the Bear ever so often. It's close by. I know in some places up in that region. So just curious.
I, I'm sure there are several. I'm sure there are plenty, but I have
The
not seen them.
transfer portal to Lenore Ryan, and then for the
Yeah,
for Rebel
exactly.
the Bear.
That's exactly right. It's probably a couple hours away. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I bet it has I bet it has an odor that is quite pungent.
We got you to hook up with the same bottle for this remote thing here. We'll get to that here in a second. But I guess first, before we crack that open, week one obviously back this month with programming for the SEC network overall. You've had volleyball, you've had soccer, different things. But first football weekend with Texas and Oklahoma, and especially related to your job, what's it just sort of been like with that level of extra inventory, all of the teams that are in the national conversation, and kind of putting this picture together for this football season?
Yeah, I mean it's been something that well, I'll back up. I mean this is like the week of Christmas. I mean there's just this excitement around the office, and just you can just kind of feel it just around even in Charlotte. I mean, there's we've got football here starting up, and the way that Texas and Oklahoma, I mean, bringing them in, there's been a probably 2 year process. I think I've been here for about two and some change, and I mean, it was one of the first things that once I got here that we were working on. It's been a long process that has so many different, arms and legs, whether it's, educating fan bases about Texas and Oklahoma fans, whether it's educating Texas and Oklahoma fan bases
Yeah.
about the rest of the fan base. But then it's down to the nuts and bolts of like, signage in our studios, and you wouldn't believe how many animations are built just across our company for E1 games and ABC games, E2, SEC Network games, and all of the different like little things that most people wouldn't notice that are that somehow identify all of the teams in the conference. And so it's been this just ever like incredibly long list of things to check off and to complete, and some of them are big and take months, and some of them are are not big, but they still got to be done. So it's pretty wild, and I'll say that it's almost, I don't think that it's necessarily hit people really what this is going to be like. I mean, because as we look at the football schedule, and you look at the different weekends from week one all the way on, I mean, the level of matchups is off the charts. I mean,
Mhm.
like just in bringing two in, like there's something about that I don't think people realize. Just with it seems small, just two, but the way that it impacts the rest of the schedule is incredible. I mean, from a fan perspective, it's incredible. From a TV perspective, it's incredible. So it's just really cool to kind of see it all finally happen. And then the other piece of it is that our deal kicks in. I mean,
Mhm.
we being the Walt Disney Company, ABC, ESPN, we have every SEC game, no matter the sport, no matter the time, and that's something that we've never had. I mean, something that our competitors have had for decades, and so that's been another wrinkle in this that's been really fun to work through and to plan for. And I think when Saturday gets here, and the 2:30 Central, the 3:30 game, when that's on our network, it's going to be very, very, very special.
So help me out a little with that, because I had this question. Reminder, everybody, we're recording this on Wednesday, so prior to the games. But I had this conversation with Neil on our flagship show in the morning a couple days ago about. I know we've got the early, the mid, and the late window, and we understand it's different from that standpoint. But are times also staggering throughout the season inside those windows? Like, how do you sort of what is the
Yeah,
plan on how to make it where there's continuously a second half game, first half game? Like, what is sort of the theory behind you guys are doing scheduling for that?
yeah, you nailed it. It's almost like, think of it like the like a NCAA basketball tournament type feel
Mm-hmm.
where from 11 Central until midnight, there's going to be SEC football on somewhere in our family of networks. I mean, live game, like the way that we've staggered SEC network to start, instead of it being an 11 Central, it'd be an 11:45 kick. And then it staggers out after that. So you get into like the 4:30s, 4:45s, or 4:15s, and then 7:45s. I'm mixing in Eastern. I'm so used to saying Eastern now, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But yeah, so the point is that from that first kick at 11 Central until midnight, it's SEC football live action, and that's something that we've again never had because we've never had the rights to all of the games. So it'll be helpful. We also just wanted to make sure that especially in Central Time schools, that we just took into account, stadium, uh, how much stadiums are filled, right at kick, and so it's harder. It's harder at 11 Central. I mean, we all know that. We've lived through that, and so just that extra 45 minutes for SEC Network games, we feel like will help.
So we're gonna get a little more of that first. Let's pop the bourbon open. Steve, help me out. What is our bourbon of choice? We're gonna do it neat. We're gonna do it on the rocks. We're gonna pour one. So tell me what we're doing.
So first of all, Chase, you broke rule number one. We actually went more than 5 minutes without pouring a glass.
Apologize.
So we got to make sure
I was getting thirsty.
yeah, it never happens again.
I just start rattling off and asking questions.
Oh, no,
sipping
no.
my water, and here we go. So,
Remind me, I want to ask you, Michael, about the 11 o'clock time slot. I've got to ask you about that. All right, so we got Four
All
Roses,
right.
small batch select. It's one of the Four Roses products. Four Roses is great. They have a lot of good stuff. One of my favorite things is their barrel strength barrel picks are some of the best bottles out there. This is just a great solid bottle. I want to say it's like in between the small batch and the single barrel, but there's a little more to this.
low proof.
It's low proof. I think it's 104 non-chill filtered, so it's got good flavor. Maybe 4 to 6, 5 to 7 years. It's a nice. I always called it a nice sipper. Pretty good. We got some fruit to it, but easy. It's not that hard to find. Should be able to get anywhere on a shelf. I think I paid 57.58 at High Cotton for it. I think that's the normal price for it retail.
Let's do the rocks first. Let's pour it up that way. So we got. You already poured all yours out, Michael. You ready to go?
I just poured mine out.
You,
I was like I
you,
said, yeah.
you preset.
Wondering when we were going to start. Yeah.
Exactly. So, one thing I like to do, and especially I think Michael said you've never tried this before.
I don't think I have.
So it's always good. I have a process, and that's typically I'm going to drink when I first try a whiskey. I'm going to try it neat. I'm going to try it with a cube, see which way I like it better. I'm probably 80% I like neat, but there's some I run into that I definitely want a cube. So we'll go
Well,
out.
and then maybe you've been drinking all day, Steve, but like I haven't had one yet. And the first sip is never the right sip. Like it takes a second for your palate
Yeah.
to take it on. Like
Oh,
when
I
you
love
get
the
into it
first
for a
sip.
second, it's always a little better than when you just do the first little
And
little hit at it.
that reminds me, the rule is, as Chase said, if you're gonna sip something, always have a little sip of something before you start, because your body initially first sip goes, wait, what's this? What are you doing? Michael, cheers, brother.
Did you get anything on the nose there, Michael, when you were sniffing it?
Comes out better on the neat
Yeah,
one.
on the knee, of course. Yeah.
You know what? I like to
Go ahead and pour
compare,
them
so
both.
I'm gonna go ahead so I can go.
That's incredibly smooth. I love. This is really easy drinking. Almost no bite. And I like a bite. I want some spice. Um, this is super smooth.
Yeah, I think it fits the port sipper category. Usually they're 90 proofs. This is 104.
It doesn't taste
Hmm
104. It
Yeah.
tastes 90, 92, like
No,
somewhere low
yeah,
90s.
I would agree.
If you're
I
a
would agree.
weeded low 90s, you're perfectly fine with this. Don't get scared off by the fact that it has triple
Oh
digits.
yeah.
Oh yeah, not close. No, we drink so many bourbons that are way
Well, that's
higher.
what I mean.
Yeah,
Like, lighter fluid's okay. So
yeah.
it's,
I drank a 140 the other day, and it was good too.
Man, it's good.
So I'm going to like this better neat. I think,
because of the low proof
yep.
and needing a little more. Yeah. Even just on the rocks
Yeah.
quickly, it's going to water it down a touch. It's going to take some of the flavor away, and you need something because smooth is good, but smooth also can be a negative, as in we're not getting any taste.
Yeah.
It just is simply
Right.
there, and it you got to be
Yep.
careful with it in the rocks. I'll be honest, we're getting close to just there with it in the rocks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree. It just doesn't have it's just not jumping, you know?
It's complex enough. Like you said, sometimes it's not flat. It does have some flavor to it. I get a little fruit.
It's a lot of cherry. It's fruit.
Mm-hmm.
It's berry. It's cherry.
Decent finish. A little oak on the finish. Not a super long finish, but not a super short finish. It's one of these bottles. If you like to have a few bottles
easy
on the shelf, keep this one on the shelf.
Yeah, this is one that if you have people over, this will please a lot of people.
Like no, you're right.
If you're going to pull one bottle out and put it on the table, everybody will.
For 10 people,
yeah,
you would get plenty of good head nods on this.
Yeah.
Because the finish does give you a little bit more of a triple digit finish. Like it's not completely in a weeded low proof finish. There's something there.
Yeah.
I definitely,
good.
I'll say this with the cube, the fruit comes in in the middle instead of the front, changes it a little bit. It doesn't like turn me off, but I do like it better neat. But I tell you, I've caught myself this summer, and I've caught myself on some trips in some hot areas to where I usually, I'm just about neat all the time, and I'll throw a cube in one every now and then just because it's hot as hell outside.
You create almost like a little cocktail vibe to it, little summer vibe.
Yeah, I think that's that. When I asked earlier about a cube, it's like it's super hot here today, and whenever I'm like hot, like my body is hot, it's just the cube is like perfect. But so like having the cube in here, and having a couple sips out of this, kind of sets me straight, and then go into the neat one, you really get it. Like you can. I feel like I can experience all of it just by cooling off a little bit, because that's hard to do in the summer. I actually drink. I love tequila in the summer, as most people do, but just because it has that summer feel to it, it's great to drink when you're hot.
You do any rum?
Yeah, I did not until Wright turned me on to some rum in Savannah, Georgia, last May, and we drank it neat. We were at a restaurant called Gray's, and it was one of the best liquors, one of the best liquors I've ever had in my life, and I've been looking for it ever since, and trying to find something that's similar to that, and it's hard to find. Rum is way harder. It's just I feel like it's just a smaller market. There's smaller supplies, so it's just not quite as prevalent as bourbon is. You just can't find that really good sipping rum. Man, it was good.
I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna ask for some ratings. See what you think about the liquor in just a minute here in a minute. First we do that though, Steve. You did have your 11 o'clock question. I know you're itching to that, so we can get to that.
Let's go for
Michael's background a little bit. What do you got?
Yeah, no,
I feel like this is gonna be a little hot seat moment.
I've got so many questions for him, and I actually want to start out with the first one. It's like, Michael was here. We were good buddies. I might have had some Ole Miss swag gear to wear every now and then. He goes to Texas A&M. He gave me some A&M gear, but I might have handed it off, traded it, or done something. But I'm still waiting on the box of the SEC gear to show up at my house. Has it showed up at your house yet?
You probably get a little less of that than you do the school issued stuff. I got a hunch there's not tons of sweatpants with SEC Network all over the room behind you.
Yeah, you got to remember that when you're working on campus, there's an equipment room. We do not have an equipment room. We don't have student athletes. We don't have stuff that's left over. Everything we buy is like it has a purpose. But I'll say, and we just updated our logo, so we've done some purging of things, and maybe I'll purge some stuff your way. We'll see.
All right. I like that. Okay. the 11 o'clock kickoff. People get so worked up about those.
I
Uh,
feel like I'm working at Ole Miss again, by the way. I mean, just so we're clear. I mean, people, this is like Rebel Grove. People just coming after me at 11 o'clock games. All right.
but
Go for it, Steve. I'm listening.
no, no, no. And here's the deal. I want our viewers to hear this and understand it. Chase and I have had enough conversations. I've talked to you and some other people to understand it. People have always viewed 11 o'clock or 11:30 start as a negative. Hey, that's the terrible game. We're going to put the horrible game there. Now, Grove wise, it is the worst for us, going to a football game, trying to get in early and all that stuff. But the 11:30 kickoff has turned into a pretty big show, right? I mean, don't y'all, I think, look at, hey, we're
It
going to
comes
put
out of game day. You get a couple options. And we say this, and we get hammered on the podcast about this. Fans hate it if we say that time slot is at all valuable because they're thinking about the Daves and the Jefferson Pilot era.
But y'all view it as a good
Right.
time slot, right?
Well, all right. So y'all just both nailed it from two different directions. The difference that people don't pick up on is when you see an 11 o'clock, you have to look at what network it is. I mean, because if you take like this year, for example, when we have it all, you may have an 11 a.m. ABC game. I mean, that is a broadcast, that is a monster viewership game. Huge. You may have an 11 ESPN one game, also huge, coming right out of game day, as Chase was talking about. I mean, Jefferson Pilot, yes, the games were at 11, and the distribution of those games was limited. All right, and so naturally, because it was limited, that pick the selection, because each week we basically select. I mean, we draft each game, and we go through our windows and we slot them, as best we can, because what we're trying to do, we're trying to maximize viewership. Take a Saturday, and we want the best possible combination of games that will, at the end of the night, will provide the highest ratings, the highest viewership across the day. And so we've got a slot. We have so many windows that we've got to fill, and some of them naturally are going to get more eyeballs. I mean, an ABC game, just by its distribution alone, is going to bring in more eyeballs than an SEC network game, if all things are equal. I mean, so we're constantly kind of tweaking and optimizing what that mix looks like throughout the day, which is honestly, I mean, if you think about why you don't know, exactly what time your game is yet, it's because we're waiting. It's because we're waiting to see what happens in week one. And then in week two, so that we can appropriately slot the rest of the games, the rest of the schedule to maximize viewership. Like that's the key. And so there are windows at 11 Central on E1. There are windows at 11, there'll be some windows at 11 Central on ABC. That'll be new this year. And then at SEC Network, we have 11:45 Central. But each one of those windows is selecting the best possible game at the time that they can select, if that makes sense. Think of it like a draft.
So, in saying that, I mean, obviously, again, your E1, as you call it, your ABC games, those things have the highest amount of eyeballs and all those sort of things. Is there or in your mind, how do you sort of rank the time slots, if you will, if that makes sense? I mean, if you're picking, where are you trying to put a game that is more consequence inside your daily schedule?
Well, but see, that's what's interesting is that in many ways, there's so much tradition that goes into that, and not every conference is the same. And so for the SEC, I mean, we love what?
2:30.
We love prime. We love night games. All right,
Okay,
so night games are like
right.
night games in the SEC. Every SEC fan loves a night game. If you go to other conferences, oddly enough, you don't get I mean, if you go ask people in the Big Ten, like fans in the Big Ten, like what's the marquee spot? What do they say? Yeah, the new game. And so it's so much about tradition. And so for the SEC, if you look at what CBS has done to that 2:30 slot, and because they had first pick for decades, so they got to literally pick first every week. And that was their window, 2:30 Central. So they got the best game. And so them doing that over decades has in fans' minds has kind of associated that slot with
Big.
like numero
Right.
uno, a big time game. And so we have no intention, no any desire to change that. What we want to do is like leverage that. And so our ABC 230 will in most ways operate just like the CPS did in terms of picking. So we will slide. I mean that one, and I mean sometimes like that prime time that night game on ABC that would follow it. So if you remember when CBS had when they had double headers, it was two a year. I think they could do. Um, we've always looked at that prime game as kind of been like our bread and butter because we didn't have that afternoon game, and there were stipulations in the CBS agreement with the conference that certain like we couldn't put games up against that one in big windows. So that window was protected for decades. It's now ours, and so we're gonna go hard at that window. We'll go hard at prime. But like, what's fascinating when you look at the schedule is that there's so many games. Like, it's people do not realize, like I was saying earlier, people don't realize just the volume of great matchups that just happen naturally in the schedule, and that's not even accounting for the storylines that will develop, as the season goes on. When you have a surprise team or whatever that becomes, they're way outside the top 25, and all of a sudden they're undefeated and number 11. So like that doesn't even account for that. So there's so many different places to put these games. So to answer the question like directly, I'd probably say it's the 2:30 Central ABC game would be number one, followed right behind that by the night, the prime ABC window, and then after that there's a ton of subjectivity. There's a lot of we have to look at time zones too. I mean, Central and Eastern, we have more teams in Central than we do in Eastern, and most people don't realize that. I mean, so there's lots of different little factors that will be at play in there. But 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central, ABC will be marquee with right behind it that prime game.
Let me preface this by saying that Michael does not get to pick which games go in what windows for ESPN or ABC or anyone else. It is not his decision. He's only been there 2 years. But let me ask this. Do you believe that whether it be the way stadiums look, certain teams, certain fan bases, is there a want for certain teams to be in certain time slots? Because obviously, when you look at the numbers, LSU has had a lot of freaking home night games.
Oh yeah,
I mean, Ole Miss has a lot of 11 o'clock games, but it is my opinion that the stadium looks better during the day than it does at night at Parham anyway.
I don't know that. Honestly, I've never heard that. I've never heard that it's
Okay.
the aesthetics of what the stadium capacity looks like on TV necessarily. Um, it's we have. I mean, remember this is Disney. I mean, so we have one of the most sophisticated research departments. I mean, in media, and so they can our research that department can tell us and predict with such accuracy, viewership numbers based on. I mean, there's so much data that's already available, and so when you take an LSU, they perform well at night, and perform being like it draws viewers. I mean,
sure, right.
viewers not just from LSU fans, but they draw viewers. I mean, period. People like to tune into those night games. And so we're looking at all kinds of factors that are like that. But it's more about viewership than it is about the aesthetics of what the stadium looks like in the broadcast. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
But it's indirect. I mean, like potentially that is. There
Yes.
are things that are
right.
factors into the decision, not necessarily that being the decision at the same time.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I'll also say that, and this is maybe too inside baseball, but it's there are so many parameters there are so many parameters that we work with from a contractual standpoint in terms of minimums and maximums, caps, things like that. Of like, a team can only be an SEC team can only be, at 11 a.m. Central if they're in the Central time zone,
Oh,
once on ABC, or you know what I mean, or like in some cases, like they can't be before a certain time of day on other networks. So there's a lot of guardrails that kind of slowly shape the schedule. So when we week to week, when we get together, there's a handful of us that basically get together and talk about what we want to do for the weekend that we haven't like totally assigned the times and networks to. And we go through and just talk about like why one should be in this spot over another. And there's a lot of good discussion but some of that stuff just kind of works itself out just by the minimums and maximums.
Did you get annoyed when you were at Ole Miss with all the 11 o'clocks at times?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to.
right.
Because remember at Ole Miss, I don't give when I was at Ole Miss, I didn't give a rip about broadcast numbers. All I cared about was putting every single freaking person involved anyway. And if somebody's going to stand in our way of doing that, then yeah,
you didn't really care what the Disney research people said.
So here's I'll tell you, it's full circle. Like here's how it comes full circle. So that when I was at Ole Miss, we and the negotiations were happening between ESPN and the SEC. I mean, there were some people at the school level. I was probably the loudest voice for this. Was going to Charlie and the SEC office about, hey, we've got to know our game times earlier, like because we're almost handcuffed because you drop a 12 days out. You tell somebody that they're going to play at 8, or you may tell them they're going to play at 11, and it's like those are different days for all intents and purposes. I mean, they're certainly different hotel nights. I mean, if you really think, totally different hotel nights. They're different in the way that you would plan your family travel. They're different in so many ways. And so we were really like, banging the drum of, hey, I get that TV wants to wait as long as they possibly can because they want the most viewers they can possibly get. But there's got to be this happy medium, because if you're not going to communicate when a game is, then you're going to impact stadium attendance. So no one wants, aesthetics aside, the games aren't going to be exciting if people aren't wanting to go to them in person, right? It's going to be hard to make them exciting on TV if you just can't get people in there. And so we were really loud and vocal about, hey, we've got to have some of this information sooner. And so it's funny, this year, remember in June, we announced, because the new contract had kicked in. And so we had announced your early windows, afternoon windows, night windows, and then the flex. But so none of that stuff, like, all of your early games today for the whole season. And that won't change. Like, you're not going to be put into another early window, and you're not going to have an early window taken away. Like, they're set. That, at least that part is set. And we thought that was important to have that ahead of the season so that people could plan for travel. But then on this side of it, I've gotten here, and that's how long things take to go. It's like, man, I wish we didn't have to say all that, because it will impact our ability to draw.
Because you're setting the windows based on reputation and expectations. I mean, like, if all we're predicting say is 10-2, well, suddenly you had them in a bunch of 11 o'clocks or whatever or whatnot. Or Ole Miss, Bingo. I think, only has one night game the whole year in league play, but yet they're ranked 6th in the country. I mean, it's a weird dynamic.
Oh wow, I missed that, or I'd be complaining right now.
Yeah, I know. That's what we were headed.
I mean, you have to go look it up yourself, Steve. Like, that's the deal. Like, you can't take his word for it. You need to go take the time after this and go look it up.
All right, I'm on it. All right, we got.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a balance.
Yeah, no.
So
I got to throw a bourbon question in here.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, and then we'll get back to this.
I know I'm an interviewer, so I just start talking about football. Go ahead.
At your house, what's your under $50? Not your bargain bourbon, but what's your go-to under $50? Let's say 30, 50, 30 to 60, whatever. What's
the
your
daily sipper?
Yeah, I've got about.
For most people.
Yeah,
you're sipping the 150.
I mean,
yeah. Do you have one?
It's easy. That is an easy question. But actually, maybe it's not because the one I'm talking about falls below 30. It's at 27, $28. Early times, bottled and bond. I, I, I don't care what anybody says. In fact, my next door neighbor, literally right there. Big bourbon guy, and was kind of started trying to start like a bourbon club in our neighborhood. And we had one visit or one meeting or whatever, and there's like 10 people there. But one of the attendees is like big bourbon guy, owns a liquor store, and like he's like a bourbon influencer on Instagram, whatever. Well, I brought over a bottle of early times. And I was like, hey, I'm not bringing big guns. I'm bringing like, this is what I love to drink. And I got some side eyes,
I bet
for
you did.
sure until people started, getting a little sip. And I'll drink that neat all day. Like I love early times, bottle and bond. And I went to the store today, and it's harder to find. It's a lot harder to find. At least it has been for me. In North Carolina, has some really weird liquor laws, like super weird, that most liquor and most of the higher end bourbon distillers don't like to come into North Carolina because it's so messed up in terms of the laws. And so my office is maybe 5 minutes from South Carolina. So I literally just cross the state line. There's a liquor store on the state line, almost like Rick's Challenge coming from Batesville. And
Yeah.
it's like there's like one on one side and there's one on the other. And I went in there and they had two bottles of early times left on the shelf. I took them both and grabbed this uh, Four Roses too. And like that is, it is, I don't understand how it's still 27, $28. It reminds me a lot of Tito's vodka, like way back when Tito's was coming out. I mean, they were so far below in terms of price, and it's a great bourbon. I'm not
See,
ashamed at all.
nope, nope. I like that. I know we're talking to a good guy. If he can tell me his everyday drinkers, early times, bottled in bond. I know I put a bottle. There's one back there on the
Is there one
shelf
back there
somewhere.
somewhere?
Yeah, it's a good pour. It
And
really is.
Eagle Rare, man, Eagle Rare. Like there's a store in Memphis, at Buster's. Buster's in Memphis it's the best bourbon selection that I've ever seen in person, and it's not even close. But I mean, they have they have handles. I mean, I bought. I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I bought two handles of Eagle Rare from there. Like have you ever seen an Eagle Rare handle? I mean, it's such a big bottle because it's the same shape. So it's super tall. And I mean, it's so good. And when you have a handle of something sitting on the bar, you're naturally just gonna be like, it's a handle. I mean, I can have that every day.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can pour a little bit in there, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're just like, wait, all my handles are gone.
I actually have one open at the house right now. It's about halfway down. I got it in Memphis. I'm prepared to argue offline about my favorite Memphis stores.
Oh, I
But
want to hear it.
yeah, but I tell you, I
Not here,
love
but yeah,
Eagle Rare has been my go-to $35 bottle. I remember getting it for $19
yeah.
at one point, $21. But for the last 10 years, it's my go-to. Uh,
I remember buying at
good
Kymie's
stuff.
on Jackson. I mean, like just sitting
Walk
on the
in, it's
shelf.
there on the shelf. I mean,
Walk in, just sit on the shelf. I mean, bottle just stacked deep in there. It's amazing.
Yep. All
You
right.
can't do that
Second
anymore.
second bourbon question.
All right.
Uh, what's the best pour? This was a tough one. What do you think is the best pour you've had this year so far? Anything jump out at you?
This year. Um, yes. Oh gosh. I will tell you because I I need to get it. I finished it. It was a Rebel Distillers Collection. It was a Buster's barrel pick, and
oh,
it
Wow.
it was unbelievable. So good. I texted it to the owner of Buster's and just said, "This is the best." I mean, I think I even maybe said this is the best bourbon I've had all year, and I have not forgotten it. I had to go
Wow.
look at the text to them to make sure I was talking about it. But yeah, it was a Rebel. It was a Buster's pick. And in fact, I think I had my mom and my parents still live in Memphis. I think I had her go grab another bottle after that, and she may have brought it to me a few months later. I got it at Christmas, and this past year, and I think that second bottle is gone too. Unbelievable,
Interesting. I've done, I
unbelievable. Yeah,
think, two Rebel barrel picks with Aaron and High Cotton, and we've had some good pours, some good bottles, but that's
I've had some
impressive.
bad ones too, though.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had there's some rebels that just like they burn way more than that,
Hmm.
but this
Yeah.
this one in particular was freaking amazing. It was
I
amazing.
I totally expected him to say, "Well, Wright, I was visiting with Wright. He poured me a Pappy 20."
Yeah.
I was looking for something along that line, but here again, I love
He,
that's
he
a
didn't go
bourbon guy.
cliche. Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
like, oh well, this is great, awesome, thanks.
Yeah,
So all right, so that's the next
I mean
question.
Pappy's great.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But
It's
You mentioned Wright, and for our
it's
viewers,
boring though in a
yeah,
lot of ways because it's just the easy answer. I'm like, I'm not interested in that, frankly. Like, I can find something
and
else
it's
that's
so
more compelling
exclusive
for
that
me.
yeah, it's good though. I
yeah,
mean, it's
it's
good, but the hype makes it.
It's not as good as the
Yeah,
hype because it's
yeah,
impossible to be
right,
as good as the hype.
right.
It is literally impossible.
it is. You're right.
And when for a lot
You've
of
nailed
years
that,
it
and you
wasn't even
want
as
it to
good
be.
as like WLW or something, you go, okay, but why?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do find that whole concept fascinating. Just the rarity and
Yeah,
how that, impacts taste and all that. It's crazy, the psychology that's happening in that. But yeah, I mean, Pappy is great. It's great,
yeah.
but it's not accessible. It's a treat. It's a delicacy. It will never be an everyday. I mean, even if you have plenty of money, it's still rare. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun, but it is what it is.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you. So, and I don't know if this is throwing your cousin under the bus or you're going to make him look good, but your cousin Wright Thompson, who you've referred to a couple of times here, what's the best
Yeah.
pour Wright's ever given you, or have y'all had an opportunity to share some pours before?
All right. We've shared many pours.
All right.
We were close. I, I I would say that, and sometimes the pour is way more about the experience of the pour than it is about the actual
It's
flavor.
like
Big
a great restaurant.
big
And
time.
there,
No, that is a huge
yeah,
caveat. Some of the best pours I've
huge
had
caveat.
were
So,
more about who I
so
was
we
with
have,
and the time.
oh, there's so many factors that
Yeah.
go into that. But our family has, on my dad's side, the Thompson side, we have a very, we've had for years a long-standing tradition of big Thanksgivings, big Thanksgivings, and they move around throughout. It's either Memphis, at my parents' house, or in Clarksdale at Wright's mom's house, or Oxford at Wright's house. I mean, or was the Tyner's house? Like we have this long standing tradition before I was born, and we were in Clarksdale a few years ago. Can't remember exactly how many. I think I was working at Ole Miss, and the night before Thanksgiving, so Wednesday night, whoever's coming in from like out of town typically kind of comes in that the night before, and we stay at the Shack Up Inn,
Oh, nice. I love it.
oh, it's awesome. I mean, so we take the whole Shack Up Inn, we take this bed and breakfast next to my aunt's house, and we Wright loves to go to Ramones in Clarksdale on Wednesday night, and we were at Ramones, and it's probably like it was like five tables put together. It was maybe 20 people, all family, 20 of us. And I mean, we're midway through maybe an entree. I mean, a bottle of Pappy is just being hand passed, around this giant long table, and there are no glasses. We're just, I mean, just the whole family is just taking, probably people that were young, probably too young to have it. I mean, it was like it was one of those experiences you just don't forget because it was so memorable. It was such family and food and experience. It was dark and Ramones is Ramones. I mean, so
Yeah.
that's probably the one that, I mean, if you ask me like memorable pours, it's probably that one.
All right, Chase, you can get back to
No, it's
talking
fine. I'm just
SEC
curious.
football now.
I mean, I am curious, in all seriousness, like getting, I mean, not serious, but took the Obus job a dozen years ago. I think something like that. 2012, right?
But wait, I took the what?
You took the Ole Miss job 2012, right? So, but it doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you how. I don't know the year, but I'll tell you it was 3 weeks before we lost to Jacksonville State in double overtime.
Oh, so it was in earlier than
And
I thought. Sorry, never mind. It was
I had
oh,
worked. So
2010.
so I
Okay,
come
my
in.
bad.
I come into Ole Miss. Before I get there, they'd won 2 consecutive Cotton Bowls. Things are just looking really
Okay,
good.
yeah, all
I
right, all
get
right.
there August 10th. I get there like August 10th, 15th, somewhere in there of whatever year that was. And I'll never forget this, y'all. I don't know if I've ever told anybody this like publicly, but um, the, I don't even know why it was me, but somehow I got pulled into some waiver meetings about Jeremiah Masoli, and and I remember I was external, like I had nothing to do with compliance or anything like that. But somehow I'm writing or I'm helping write a waiver to have Jeremiah play and play immediately without having to sit out. And it was something about like a forestry major. I mean, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
crazy stuff. But I just I'll never forget. Like I remember thinking, what is this? Is this what this is going to be like? Like this is not at all what I expected. Wasn't like I'm not doing that. It's like it was fascinating to me. And then so all that happens. Jeremiah, they grant the waiver. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. I mean, and then it was like, oh, we got Masoli, and this is going to be awesome season. I mean, Cotton Bowl, that's like old news. Like we're going way bigger than that. And I mean, that Jacksonville State double overtime. I mean, that was week 3 or 4 on the job, and it that was when I realized immediately, because everyone had told me before that. It's like, oh, what are you like? All you got to do is win. It takes care of everything. All you do is win. All you got to do is
Yeah.
win. Winning is the
Yeah.
best marketing. Winning is the best this. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we lose, and I was like, no, we have work to do. Like we're gonna work our asses off to do everything we can to mitigate the swings of wins and losses. And I'm glad we did, because my second year, so we went 4-8 in football. My second year there, when we went 2-10 in football, people don't talk about this as much, but that second year was the worst year statistically in Ole Miss athletics history if you take every sport.
Oh,
And it was like in history. So whatever that was, 10 or 11. If you take all sports and their final standings, worst in Ole Miss athletics history. And so it proved to me at the time that like that stuff is bonus. Like we have to do everything in our power that we can to sell tickets, to generate fans, to storytell, to humanize, to personalize our student athletes, to share with our community and our fans who these people are that are representing this incredible brand that Ole Miss is, and are leading, kind of the front porch of the university. And part of me is, I'm not just part of me. All of me is grateful that happened, even though I didn't want any of that at the time. It was and then there was the mascot thing in there that they handed me on week like 4, and was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, the students voted. Go ahead and you guys execute it." I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like, were you trying to get me run out of here within 30 days?" That was wild. So yeah, that's how I know when it was. It was whenever that year was. I literally don't know the year. It was '09 or 10 or 11.
Do you recall? I mean, obviously we became friendly and friends, but you remember the first interaction you and I had? I was incredibly pissed off. Do you have any recollection of this at all? Do you remember this?
Vaguely, was it in my office? Did you come
No.
to my
So it
office?
was. So y'all had done the fan experience survey,
Oh
and
yes, and
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
were not in the multiple choice question.
Yes. I
I'll
was
never
so
forget it,
pissed
Chase.
off. Like you and I barely knew each other, nothing, and it was
I
not going.
know.
You had walked into it going, "What the hell?" Because it feels much bigger than you, and it was bigger than you. But yeah, it was. Where do you get your Ole Miss news? And it was the
Yeah,
Ole Miss Spirit other websites, and
ooh,
I was
that was a huge
livid.
mistake.
Yeah, I came
yeah.
in.
Well, it was now there were like 7 options, but it
Yeah.
was like television, OleMissSports.com, whatever. But you're so right, and I remember thinking like, what a boneheaded move on my part, like
Yeah. I
to
was.
leave that out, because as a data person, it messed up the data. Like
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
and I was mad about that, but I was also mad that it was just like such a dumb slight to somebody. Like,
It was
why would
really
you
funny.
do
It
that?
was.
But yeah,
And looking back, I was
it
like, "Oh
was.
my
But you're
god,
exactly. I'll never forget that. I couldn't remember if it was you or Neil that was mad. I guess it was. I think it was maybe when it was both of you.
Probably
But
both of them.
um, Yeah,
Well,
that was
typically I'm
dumb.
the
I'm
one that like
sorry.
reaches
Yeah,
out because I have a little more like typically poise in some of those
yeah,
situations to
Mm.
handle it. So that's where we ended up. But no,
you were in the right.
my question I was getting at
You were in
though
the right.
is, I mean, in all seriousness, the day you take the Ole Miss job right there, you come from marketing and private sector and whatnot, but I mean, did you have career goals? I mean, was there a goal past just simply working at Ole Miss at that moment? I mean, you probably didn't think, hey, college career
No,
administrator and then end up running a TV network of all things or whatever that ends up being.
no, and that's probably one of my faults. I don't. I've never thought that way naturally. I've never. I I tell people today. I'll tell you now. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Like today. I mean, like, and I love what I do, but I'm not trying to make it something that I do forever. I'm not trying to protect it in a way. I just I just want to do good work, and wherever that leads me is fine. But I was not alarmed, but it was an eye-opening experience to come from private and where 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 no one in a private sector is like, oh, I can't wait to be the president of this company one day, or
Yeah.
president, or the chairman of this, or what. No one talks like that at all. And I didn't talk. I didn't understand that. But when I got to athletics, um, it's this weird focus and just not obsession. That's strong. I hate to use that word, but it's just this focus of like, oh, okay. I mean, you want to be an AD, right? I mean, everybody. I mean, everyone on staff wants to be an AD. And for a minute there, I drank the Kool Aid, and I was like, yeah, yeah, I want to be an AD, yeah, yeah, you know. And then I think it was I don't know where it was, and there. It was early though, and I remember looking at my wife, and I remember going, Leslie Ann, I don't know what's wrong with me. I have no desire to be an AD, none anymore. Like that just doesn't seem fun to me. But I feel guilty saying it out loud. Like I felt because it was so that industry is so consumed with like working your way up in the ladder, and it's math. I mean, there's only so many AD chairs. There's thousands of people below them. It's math, and there's a reason. I mean, there's some people that are great in that chair. There's some people that are great in other chairs. I've always felt like I can do more. I can bring more value to the organization that I'm with in a different chair, and one that probably has more ties to the experiences that I had growing up and the experiences that I had in the private sector, because I had a 10-year head start on other parts of the business that needed help and needed care, and like the external side, the marketing side, the production side, the storytelling side. I mean, when I got to Ole Miss, there was I think I inherited maybe six SIDs or so, a video board operator slash graphic designer, and three or four, maybe three Telesouth employees that were presented to me as the marketing department. And um, when I get there, you realize that's not the marketing department at all. That's sponsorship sales, full
Yeah.
stop. And it's not their job to go market like that. That's not their job. I mean, like that's not their skill set. And so you we had to build something that took up every bit of waking hours that we had to bring in a Micah and build out a creative, a storytelling division, and bring in marketing. You know, someone who understood what it took to put pieces out there that will help motivate fans to come to games. Period. And to give and all of those things. And so it was just different. Like it was different. And I think some of the reason why I didn't want to be an AD was that I was so busy on the other, and when you've got stuff that you got to do, like you just go, and you don't sit there and think about, well, what do I want to be? You know, when am I going to get that job? And so I've just never thought like that, and it felt honestly in that business, it felt kind of odd about it.
I think you'll probably agree here in some ways. I look at that era, and you had Freeze going to multiple access bowls. You had wins. You had a lot of things. You had, I guess, 2014 when baseball goes to Omaha, basketball goes to the tournament, and in 13, and then football obviously doing what it's
Yeah.
doing, and everything else. And it wasn't like from a football standpoint, it wasn't the most efficient thing in the world, but it told Ole Miss that hey, you can win big, and we're not scared to win big. Because I felt like there's been some staffs in the past that kind of liked winning 9 games, 8 games, 7 games, 6 games, get to a bowl. But there was a thing where you looked up and went, hey, you're in the Sugar Bowl in 16. You're in the Peach Bowl in 14. You're in these different things, and it's doable even when everything's not running and clicking as whatever. When you look at just the Ole Miss program right now, what's going on with the Grove Collective, they've become somewhat of the forefront of that. I mean, you guys did create the birth of that in a lot of ways to move it to a different era. I mean, what do you kind of think and feel when you see sort of where it's sitting right now?
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, like it's like the whole expression, and I think was it Sinquez Gold? It was Sinquez Golson who said, if you don't want to come to school, then don't come
Don't
visit.
visit.
Like
Yeah.
truer words have not been
As
spoken.
opposed
Like
to
that,
Sinquez
it,
Golson's dad one time, Michael, can you hold that thought that I'm covering an All Star game in Trustmark. It was whether Sinquez was going to go pro to the Red Sox or show up at Ole
mm,
Miss. And his dad walks up to me and I said, "Hey, what are you thinking with the draft?" He goes, "If it don't make money, it don't make sense." And I went, "Okay, sounds good." So anyway, go ahead.
there you go.
Yeah,
So I like that statement has always stuck with me because I think that and the famous what is it the now my tongue tied on it, but you don't graduate from all this, that
yeah.
the one that's in the
The
union.
Frankie Everett
So
thing.
yes, that's exactly right. So those two statements are so true because Oxford has this magnetism, this attraction that can't really be explained on paper. Like it just can't, but it is attractive. It is magnetic. It draws people in. It is a wonderful place. Like it is a warm and it's a wonderful place. And so it's 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 not surprising to me that when you activate some of that and you tell that story and you let people know that that's what it is, and you can interest them in coming to visit. And again, people who visit there, I don't know that I've ever. I'm sitting here trying to think, but I mean, you just don't hear people talking about a bad experience they had visiting Oxford or Ole Miss, like ever. Like it's kind of like a little Eden, a little utopia. And so it's just a matter of time before more people start doing that, and then word of mouth travels, and then it's like this recruit talks to that recruit, or this student talks to that student, and it's like people are coming to see this. I also think that the out of people some people have a hard time with just the number of out of state students, but think about what that does from a geographic reach perspective of your brand,
Mm-hmm.
because those people come to you and then they are dispersed and they go out into the world, into the different states and all this stuff, and all they're doing is just they're just ambassadors for Ole Miss. And so that stuff doesn't happen overnight for sure, but it all plays a factor. It's like Oxford's been sitting on this and Ole Miss has been sitting on this incredible story, this incredible brand, and it's just a matter of time before people realize what it is and the secret's out. So it's not it's not surprising. It's just it's actually really rewarding to look at it now and be like, all right, things are being activated. The assets that were there from the get go, because it's always been that way. It's not changed in that way. It's just more people know about it, and like that's pretty awesome. See, as an alum, I think that's I have a lot of pride in graduating from Ole Miss, and I mean, it's obviously near and dear to my heart for lots of reasons.
And yet you won't give them night games.
Hey,
Nice,
remember,
Chase.
sometimes games generate. Hey, I want viewers. I don't want Ole Miss night games. I want viewers.
So
God, I love it. I love
back to
it.
the bourbon real quick. Got Four Roses, small batch select is our bottle today. Michael, I want a 1 to 10 rating. I want a rocks rating, a neat rating, and an overall rating on the bourbon. What do you got? I want 3 different ratings.
All right. Um, the neat is an 8.
Okay.
The the cube is a 5, and the overall is probably a 7.
Steve, what do you got?
7 neat, 5 uh, with the cube, and I'll give it a 6.5, 7. I think it's, you know,
I really like the neat.
yeah, yeah.
I've really
I'll
it's
go
growing on
7.
me
It's
a lot.
solid because here's the deal. I'm going to drink it neat, so I'm going to rate it a 7.
Yeah, I tell you what
Right.
it is. It is a great. I think maybe above all else, it's what Michael said. It's if you have 10 people in a room, bring the bottle out, everybody be fine with it. Nobody's going to bitch,
Yeah.
moan, or complain at that point.
Yep.
You're going to get that. I think it's also a great entry level bourbon for somebody who's always drank cocktails or on the rocks that wants to try something neat. Then you go, hey, let's
Yep.
introduce it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some more flavors, but it's not going to be this Booker's or Baker's or something that's going to pop me at
Yeah.
125 and make me go back to what I'm doing. It is an entry point where you'll get just enough complexity to think you're doing
So,
something.
and I love your
That's a good
thought
that's a good
there
way of saying it.
because I always, when I talk to people, they want to get into bourbon, and I'll tell them, hey, get some products, get a bean product, do
Mm-hmm.
Knob Creek, Buffalo Trace, or Eagle Rare, expand, try the different distilleries. And so, to me, instead of saying get a Four Roses small batch, I would say get this bottle right
Get the
here.
select.
And that's kind of going to give you a feel for Four Roses, what they do, their mash bills. Of course, they have a lot of mash bills.
All the stand. Yeah.
I love that. That's a good point. I like that.
Where will you be
I'll tell you
Saturday
what
night?
else I like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you what else I like that's really a go-to, and I haven't bought it in a little while. But that double oaked, when you said
Oh,
Woodford,
It's
that double oaked,
fantastic.
I just
it
love
It
is.
is
that,
so
man.
good.
It
It's
is.
so consistent. Like it's
And
so
that
consistent, and
in that era, and
yeah,
we'll
it's
talk
good.
about this a lot on the podcast as episodes go on. It's double oaked and it's Old Forester 1910
Yeah.
are the two that I just
Yeah. Okay.
constantly go right there. Just keeps
It
giving it to
is.
me over and over and over
That's
again.
all I need. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a great
Double.
way of saying it. If you're only
Double.
going to have like
Yeah.
a steady stream of one or two like those are solid.
Woodford Double Oaked is the sleeper $65 bottle out there. In fact, my college
Mm-hmm.
roommate,
Yeah.
Mike Webb, he's like, he tries everything, and I always go back to Double Oaked, and I get it. It is such a good pour. You're right,
Yep.
spot on.
But it's the same every time. Like I've found such consistency in it, which is nice. And it's also one of those I feel like you can pull out, with 10 people around a table. Some of them have
Yeah,
never had it neat.
yeah.
Like it's it's well liked. I think it's solid.
So,
Yeah.
Michael, last question from me. You were in the Bourbon Club here, Branchwater, when you were in town, and you've been gone for a while. You have not been back since we have the Whiskey House here. When are you going to come back and visit?
Um, I know I'll be back. Well, I know I'll be back next season because we were already planning the trip. We've got some really really close friends that we made here in Charlotte. They're both Gators. They've
Okay.
neither have been to Oxford. Neither have ever been to Oxford. So when Florida comes to town next year, we've already been talking about a trip. So and also a big bourbon guy. So
Oh, good.
we'll need and his wife is a big bourbon guy too. Both of them are big bourbon people.
I love that.
So I want to hook you. I want to hit you up on that, and maybe we'll do a. I want to see the new facility. Y'all's new facilities, as they say. So I'm trying to think. This year, it just kind of depends. I mean, um, I'll hit a couple of SEC Nation stops, but outside of that, I will be consuming most of our games on TV, and that's the beauty of working in TV.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, when a Saturday is playing out, I mean, you're not worried about the technical sides. Like, what's going through your head? What are you looking for? I mean, you're obviously still work brain to some extent. So, like, as a Saturday goes on for all these games, what do you hope to see, or what are you looking for?
I mean, I just trying to look at it big picture, and then we do have programming. I mean, we have some hardcore decision making that has to happen on Saturdays if there's weather. I mean, if there's overtime. I mean, it does absolutely impact what it is that we do, just because we have to literally start games in other places and do join in progresses. I mean, it can get hairy, but typically, I mean, I'm kind of sitting up in air traffic control and just watching all of them and kind of seeing how the day is going and what some of the storylines are and how we can capitalize on them and tell some of the stories and some of our studio shows and things like that. But it's most of the time it's thankfully it's in front of a TV, and I look at my wife in the morning and it's like game day's coming on, nation's coming on. I mean, we're turning on the TV and it's like we're just gonna watch football all day, and that's a pretty damn good job. I mean, I'm just saying, that's a pretty damn good job.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what's said at my house if I say that. Yeah, that'll work.
So when's the honeydew?
It's work, it's work. I gotta work. We gotta work.
I love it.
Sundays are the honeydews and the other stuff around and the kids and whatnot.
Yeah, because I don't watch a lot of pro. I've never watched pro. I mean, once I started working at Ole Miss, by the time Saturday at 1 a.m. or whatever, Saturday night rolls around, you just don't want any football.
You've been at war,
you just
Michael.
footballed out.
It's like battle at that
point. Sunday is like church and family and no sports if I can handle it. The only channel that probably shows up on Sunday is Red Zone. Just let it kind of go in the background and check your fantasy team every once in a while. It's that's the weekend. And it's
people
great.
People have seen that amazed with me. They're like, "Hey, what NFL teams?" I'm like, "I'm a Saints fan, but I'm so burnt out from college to where I don't have the emotional capacity for it. I don't care. I can't figure it out. It's whatever. I'm not like I grew up a hardcore TBS Braves fan. I couldn't tell you the record within 10 games right now.
Right. And I want to I love the Saints too, and I want to I wish that I could get into it more. I wish that I would have the desire to read an article or two in the week leading up to the game, but I don't. I can't generate it, and it's not authentic at all. I mean, so I'll be like, the Saints are on Red Zone. Okay, scored. Great. All right, and then back to your regularly scheduled programming. Like it's just different. Totally different.
Chase, I've got an alibi. One more question. When's the last time you've been out shooting pistols, my man?
Well, I cut my finger pretty bad. My trigger, the one finger that I need, that's it resting, like it's totally crooked.
That doesn't look good.
Yeah, so I cut it. I cut it with a kitchen knife after I was cutting some chicken with a butcher knife, and cut it in May of last year, and cut it bad, and surgery and all that stuff. And I've shot once since then. I will say, Steve, you'd be proud of me. I dry fire a lot, and I've been dry firing a lot just to get that muscle memory back.
Yeah.
And I've shot once. I will tell you, I did shoot once, probably a month and a half ago or so, and I'll probably shoot next week, and try to get back in the groove of it. But I shot last maybe 6 weeks ago, and my red dot still blows your iron sights out of the water every day of the week. Twice on Sunday, I ripped that target apart right down the center after a year of not shooting. So I don't want to hear any of that BS from you. So anytime, anywhere, I'll go.
Well, me and my iron sights will take you on any day, bro.
You're getting red. I'm just telling you. I think Chase knows that you may know I've backed you into a corner.
Yeah, well, I'll say this too, though. So the Bureau's gone to the red dot. So everybody moved in your direction. I knew you would be super happy with that. Michael,
it's so better.
We
so much
shoot
better.
every now and then, and I got to tell this story. I mean, first time I met him to shoot, we went out to the range. He gets out of the car and he's got more guns than I have. I mean, he's bringing everything in the world out. And I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting.
Real.
Oh yeah, but hey, he got out there. He's a good shot. I think we worked on shooting both eyes up to 15 yards, and which I think is a great skill. And he's a good shot. He handles a pistol well. More importantly, he handles a pistol well. He's a good shot, but I did. He always has this red dot. He did, and I always
give him a little
I got on his ass about it. So
not a laser. Now look, for inexperienced listeners, not a laser. It's not a dot. It's not a red dot on the target. It's a reflective sight on the gun.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I genuinely, and I actually think about this more than I should. But most of the time I feel like I missed my calling. Like if somebody said if you could go back and be anything you want to be, anything, I probably would say today I would probably say CIA or FBI, like
Oh wow.
something in law enforcement, something with cool weapons. I I I'm all in. Like I've always been that way. I've always been that way. But that, in fact, we went to the FBI Academy, as you know, Steve, and at spring break, I took my whole family there. One of the coolest experiences I've ever been through in my whole life, and it just solidified. I was like, gosh, man, I wish I were 20 years younger, 30 years younger, to get out there and do this because it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
Okay. Michael Thompson, SEC Network. Wrap it up with this. Appreciate the pour, having the drink with us, all the conversation.
Yeah.
Back again every single week here with you with Bourbon South, and Michael's got a good football season headed ahead. Again, Ole Miss continuing its 2024 season. So appreciate it, bud. Let's talk again.
Good to see you, brother.
Hotty toddy. Hey, I'm pulling hard. Let's go.
Cheers.